Joining us now, the top Republican on the Judiciary Committee, Congressman Doug Collins. And welcome back, sir, to Fox News Sunday.
Good morning, Chris. Good to be with you.
So, as we said, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, has written you asking whether or not Republicans want to subpoena any witnesses to testify on the president's behalf. Will you?
Well, we're going to take care of that. We're making sure that we get our witness list in. But let me just point out something here. Chairman Nadler sent a letter asking us by Friday to present this list and present all the things that we would like to do. However, we're not even going to see the Schiff report, as it's going to be done, out of committee until Tuesday night, possibly even Wednesday morning before we get to see it. There's a lot of problems here that we have to investigate here. As an attorney, if you have a case going forward, you want to know exactly what you're facing. And Chairman Nadler is simply asking for an arbitrary deadline because we've not seen the Schiff report. We've not even heard from him what he actually wants to have for hearings. This is just another example, I think, of him being told, I need to do something, and we go from there. This is a problematic part for us to have to go forward with.
Okay, but I just want to be clear in the first part of what you said. Will Republicans on the committee call for subpoena witnesses to testify? And if so, who are you going to ask to testify?
Oh, of course. We're going to testify. First and foremost, the first person who needs to testify is Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff is the author of this report. Adam Schiff has been the author of many things, a lot of them found to be false over the past couple of years, but he's going to be the author of this report. He's compared himself in the past to a special counsel. This is what he said he was doing. Well, if we go back to Clinton and even back to Nixon, but in Clinton, Ken Starr was the special counsel. He presented a report that we're going to get as Judiciary. He actually came and sat and testified under oath and took questions from all sides, including the White House. My first and foremost witness is Adam Schiff.
So you want to bring him in before the committee, not just to present a report, but to take questions from Democrats and to be cross-examined, if you will, by the Republicans?
He needs to be. He's put himself into that position. If he chooses not to, then I really question his veracity and what he's putting in his report. I question his, the motives of why he's doing it. It's easy to hide behind a report. It's easy to hide behind a gavel in intelligence committees, behind closed-door hearings. But it's going to be another thing to actually get up and have to answer questions about what his staff knew, how he knew, what he did about the whistleblower report, his interactions that he's had with Ukraine, the other things that he's had over time in this process, and also why he has still not released documents to our committee and reports to our committee that we need to actually proceed in our committee of Judiciary Committee, which is the committee of impeachment. I have a question. Why are they hiding this stuff from us? If they think they have such a case, give us all the materials and don't let Jerry Nadler write a crazy letter that says on the 6th, let us know who your witnesses are. We don't even have the information from the Intel Committee yet. This is why this is a problematic exercise and simply a made-for-TV event coming on Wednesday.
Okay. Chairman Nadler has also written to the White House asking if they want to have a lawyer to represent them at Wednesday's hearing, which is going to be with constitutional scholars, and to actually mount a defense of the president the next week, a week from Monday. Do you know whether the White House is going to participate?
Well, I think we're still looking at that. But I might have a question for you, Chris. Why would they want to participate in just another rerun? We're back, by the way, in rerun season here in the Judiciary Committee. We've already had constitutional scholars in the committee talking about, from the Mueller report and others, is there an impeachable offense? This is a complete American waste of time right here. The problem is that Jerry Nadler and the rest of them have already got in their mind they're writing the articles of impeachment, whether they have fairness or process or all. So if the White House participates with a bunch of constitutional scholars, which, by the way, I wrote a letter to Chairman Nadler, why are we doing this on a normal 3-to-1 ratio? If it's so important, like we did in Clinton, where we had almost 4 times as many of these witnesses, why don't we at least get 2 for 2? Why don't we at least have more witnesses in this process?
Let me interrupt for a minute here, because that's what you're saying, is that 3 of the 4 constitutional scholars are going to be pro-Democrat, pro-impeachment, and 1 of the 4 is going to be basically questioning whether or not there are grounds for impeachment.
That's exactly right. That's what we're seeing here. And look, I think the problem is they're on a time frame. It's an internal kind of time frame to try and finish this out by the end of the year because they want to get at this president right now before before everybody completely sees through the process sham of the elections for next year. So we're rushing this, Chris. I don't think the American people, even if they support an impeachment inquiry or even trying to remove and overturn the votes of these 63 million people for this president, they don't think this is fair. And I've talked to Democrats who do not believe this is fair. If the Judiciary Committee simply has has a constitutional scholar hearing, and then they have a presentation of a report by Adam Schiff, and we go straight to a markup. That is a failure on Chairman Nadler of the ultimate proportion, because this is a failure of the Judiciary Committee to be able to talk to fact witnesses, to be able to talk to the people that have actually been a part of this, and actually have the president viably participate in his own defense, which he's not had the opportunity to do now.
Okay,
to simply go ahead.
Okay, you're pretty wound up, I got to say. You obviously had some turkey this Thanksgiving.
And a little bit of cranberries as well.
Okay, well, me too. Let's talk about the merits of this. You say there's no basis to impeach the president. I'd like to play some of the key testimony that the House Intel Committee heard the last couple of weeks, basically making allegations or stating evidence against the president. Take a look.
The meeting President Zelensky wanted was conditioned on the investigations of Burisma and alleged Ukrainian interference in the 2016 U.S. elections.
It is improper for the President of the United States to demand a foreign government investigate a U.S. citizen and a political opponent.
Mr. Giuliani's requests were a quid pro quo for arranging a White House visit for President Zelensky.
Congressman Collins, before we get to the question of whether this is an impeachable offense or not, simply, do you see anything wrong with that? The president conditioning support for Ukraine, whether it was a meeting, whether with Zelensky, whether it's military, conditioning support for Ukraine to that country investigating some of the president's political rivals?
Well, I think it's interesting that the premise of your question is based on witnesses who agree with your premise. I disagree and say that Mr. Volker, Mr. Morrison, even Mr. Sondland, who presumed it was being conditioned, the president himself told Senator Johnson there was no precondition. There's nothing to be presumed on this. So if you want to show one side, then also show the other side as we go along with this. President Trump has always been concerned about foreign aid. He's always been concerned about what's going on in the Ukraine and Europe, and how is Europe participating, and how our tax dollars. The question is, though, if we're looking at corruption, does it matter who's involved? That's the problem in the policy issue that got discussed in Intel. He was looking at the corruption part of this, and yes, if the Bidens were involved, then they would have been a part of that. But the problem is there's never a discussion in Intel that we saw, as I just pointed out, several key fact witnesses who actually said there was no conditioning on this. So you can put reporters up or not.
But let me ask you, if I might, sir, because we're about to run out of time. July 25th phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky. He never mentions corruption in Ukraine. He never mentions Burisma. He just mentions investigate 2 Americans, and he names them, Joe Biden and his son Hunter.
Okay. Again, if you look at the call itself, there was an overall discussion which had been had previously by others in discussion with Ukraine. And also just go back to the fact of the president looks after our tax dollars, and the president's looking out for the fact, was there problems there? When we look at this process, we do not see a president who conditioned anything. He just wanted the facts, whether it be 2016 election, whether we were looking at of what was happening. He was looking at the fact of, is there corruption? So I do not spend dollars that I don't need to spend in the Ukraine because of corruption that was still there. Okay, this is an issue.
Let me just ask you a thought experiment. Just bear with me for a minute. Okay. If you believed that the president had used the power of his office to try to get Ukraine to interfere with our elections, if you believe that, would that be an impeachable offense?
I do not believe it, so that I'm not going to answer a hypothetical in which is designed to simply say that the president did something improper. Chris, he did nothing improper. There was nothing about a problematic giving aid to another country in which you're talking about corruption, which he's required to do by law. And it just so happened that a presidential candidate's son, who was getting a massive amount of money from a company that had been under investigation, in which even other witnesses that have been favorable, quote, to the Democrats in the investigation, have said needed to be looked at. This is a problem of overall proportion, but there's nothing here that the president did wrong. And this is the thing that we're going to move forward on.
Okay. I got one last question. I got a minute for it.
Okay.
A U.S. Senate seat in Georgia comes open at the end of the year. Johnny Isakson, the senator there, is retiring. President Trump has pushed hard for Georgia Governor Brian Kemp to appoint you as the senator, but it appears from all reports that the governor is going to go ahead and appoint Kelly Loeffler, a big Republican and a financial executive, to that seat instead. What do you know about where this stands? And if he appoints her and not you, how are you going to feel about that?
Well, the governor still has that appointment to be made. I appreciate the support that I've received from the president and many others. But right now, as you can see in this interview this morning, I have a big job to do in the next 3 weeks, and that's impeachment. We'll let to see where the governor goes with this pick, and then we'll have a decision to make after that. But right now, my full focus and attention is on impeachment, and also as I look forward to what is best for Georgia. Those will be the things that play into my mind. But right now, first and foremost, is defending against this faux sham impeachment that we're going to get started on Wednesday with.
Just real quick, when you say you'll have to make a decision after that, if it happens, does that mean that you might potentially run against her when she's up for re-election?
Well, Chris, let's see what the governor does first. I think he's heard from a lot of folks, but if he does, then that'll be a decision we have to make at that point.
Congressman Collins, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Always good to talk with you, sir.
Yes, Chris, always good to be with you. Take care.